Hello, I am Mukesh Bansal. Welcome to SparX. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the topic of habits. I think habits are super important for anyone who wants to create a big impact in life. I did not know this earlier in my career. It was only in my 30s. I understood the idea of habits, the role habits play in shaping what we do day after day after day, and how, because of our habits, certain actions, both good or bad, tend to compound over a very long period of time. I think anyone who is interested in doing big things in life, if you want to create big impact, if you want your efforts to add up into exponential impact over long term through power of compounding, you have to understand what habits are. You need to understand how habits work, how so many things that happen in our day on a daily basis are a function of habits. Without understanding habit, you don't know where your energy in a day are going to do. For example, today most of what will happen in my day is because of habits I have acquired over a period of time. Some habits are great habits, but there are so many habits that we all have that we are not even aware of. Something as mundane as what side of bed you step out in the morning. For example, if I try to think, I step out of right side of my bed every single day, whether I'm at home or traveling or hotel bed or wherever. Similarly, if you pay attention to which sock you first put on, all of us always, every single time, put on the sock on the same leg. For some people, it's right leg, for some people, it's left leg. Obviously, no one is sitting around and thinking, whether I should put on a sock on left leg first or right leg first. No, you don't work that way. It's a habit that you've acquired over a long period of time. Whether you are a tea person or a coffee person, that is a function of a habit. What time you go to office, are you somebody who ends up in office at bright and early at 9 a.m.? That's a habit. Or you're somebody who probably start very late, around 12 or even 1, at least that's acceptable in Bangalore tech culture. That's a function of habit. Which side of your shoulder you carry your laptop bag, it's also a habit. We don't think about it. For example, again, I always carry my laptop bag on right side of my shoulder for last 20 years. And now to the extent where I think my right shoulder is little bit tilted this way versus, and I want to change. I want to carry my laptop bag on left shoulder, but I just don't remember because that's not a habit that I'm used to. My brain automatically decides it's an autopilot behavior I tend to do, and so on. What I'm trying to say is, in a given day, so many things happens morning till night. Everything that happens is mostly a function of habit. Depending upon who you talk to, what literature you read, people will say as much as 80 or 90% of what happens in our day is a function of our habit. Take today or tomorrow or the day you had 1 year ago or 5 years ago, all day looks like same. You get up, you start your day, you do bunch of things, day comes to an end, you go to bed. That's basically whole life. So if the entire life is made up of these singular days, and if everything that happens in a day is a function of habit, that means most of the outcome of your life is going to be a function of the habits you have. Aristotle had famously said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is therefore an habit. That's the point I'm trying to make, is by taking control of a habit, you can choose who do you want to be. All of us are, one way to think about who we are is basically, thinking in terms of habits. I am a bundle of habit. I've acquired a bunch of habits over a period of time. A lot of habit acquisition is not conscious. Many things happen around us, how we grow up, who we spend time with, which affect our habit. There are so many different ways to acquire habit. Many people acquire some habit while growing up. They see their parents doing certain things. For example, maybe in some household, people have morning tea. Maybe it's a family ritual. Everyone sits around a dining table and have a tea together. Now that becomes a habit. You acquire that habit and you'll continue for the rest of your life. Maybe the habit also include adding 2 or 3 or 4 spoonful of sugars. Now that's part of a habit. Something you do on an autopilot manner every single day without thinking. In fact, you don't feel like you are able to start your day on a good note unless you have your morning cup of tea. For example, my father always used to pray around 7:30 in the evening. I grew up watching him doing that. So that could be an influence. You pick up a lot of these habits from your parents. A lot of people's, spending habit are based on their parents' spending habit, what they do, and so on. We pick up a lot of habits in our college years, or whenever, when people start their first job or they change city. What we are doing is we are always absorbing things in our environment. We are trying to fit in. We are trying to see how things happen that way. Um, an example of when I started working early in my first job, some of my colleagues used to go out in the afternoon for a coffee break. They will drive to a nearby Starbucks. This was in late 90s. And initially I would just go along with them just to take a break from my work. And since everyone was having coffee, I'll also have a coffee. After a few months, that became a habit. Even when they're not around, I'll just start feeling this craving for having coffee in the afternoon. And pretty much, that became part of my identity over a period of time. So you're absorbing these habits from your environment. Obviously, parents, siblings, friends, colleagues are very big source of habits. These are the habits that we are absorbing subconsciously. No one is making that choice. Example, picking up a habit for smoking. Most people start smoking in college. Somebody in the college starts smoking. You are hanging out together. You are curious. You want to try it. Give it a shot. You feel something. Do it next time. And before you know it, the dopamine related to smoking starts to kick in, and slowly it's become part of your daily routine. You have certain, set patterns. I've seen a lot of people, the moment a long meeting ends, that is their cue for bolting out to nearby smoking corner for their smoke. So, that's a habit, people acquire from their environment. So a lot of habits we acquire unconsciously just by being virtue of which environment we are part of. One of my favorite saying is, you are sum total of 5% you spend most time with. What that means is, 5 people that you're spending most time with, you are continuously watching them. You are going to mimic their habits, mimic their desires, because you're trying to blend in, and that starts to become part of habits that you have. For example, if your friend circle is somebody who is always watching content in the evening, chances are you will end up picking the habit and become part of a autopilot habit that's part of your personality. But some habits are also driven by life events. When something significant happens, we consciously make an effort to build a habit. One of the examples I've seen that, people who have small kids, when the kids start school, and schools mostly start in the morning, you see in the apartment complexes, the bus will come around 6:30 or so. So if you need to have your kid ready to go to school at 6:30, you probably need to get up at 5:30, wake up the kid, help the kid get ready, prepare a snack or lunch, and so on. So the virtue of the kid is having to start a school forces you to build a habit of getting up early in the morning. Sometime you go see a doctor and doctor tells you that you are pre-diabetic because your glucose levels have been above a certain threshold. Your HbA1c is, say, 7 or something. And that acts as a wake-up call. You want to do something about it. So that becomes a strong motivation for you to try to perhaps cut down sugar or cut down snacks, pay more attention to your diet. Sometimes the trigger could be a big life event. A lot of people, when let's say a wedding is coming up, whether it's yours or a close friend, you want to look good in a wedding, or sometime, maybe you are preparing to go on a holiday, which is on a beach, you want to look a certain way, or it's a college reunion. Again, you have a motivation to look a certain way. So you start to make habit changes, and you'll probably subscribe for a gym. You start going for your workout regularly. Maybe you make some diet change. So these are examples of habit change that we make because we want a certain outcome. There is a life event which increases our awareness. We want to make that change. So we start putting in that effort, and sometimes we are able to make that habit change. And once we make the habit change, chances are it may become a long-term habit change, even though trigger might have been a particular diagnosis or a particular life event. But now that you have made that change, you've struggled through that initial period of 2-3 months, it becomes part of who you are, and then we carry on that habit for a long period of time. I have picked up a lot of habits from the companies I've worked for. At different stages, we probably had a different challenge. To adapt to that challenge, I started acting in a certain way, and over a period of time that become part of my habit. One example I can share is in a corporate setup, people are generally giving feedback, and unfortunately a lot of feedback is about somebody else. So somebody will come to me and share a feedback about another person who is not in the room. At some point I decided the probably best way to have that conversation is to call the third person in the room. So I developed that habit. I would call that person, and then I say, let's all of us talk while face to face instead of talking behind someone's back. And that has become a habit for me, that now no matter where I work, I continue that habit. I have a habit of writing what I call top of my note every Monday morning. Now, I continued with the habit while I was a Myntra. I will continue the habit at Cult. I'm pretty sure in tomorrow, if I work somewhere else, I'll continue that habit. So, the beauty of a habit, once the habits are formed, they become part of who you are. And little later, I'll talk about, why our brains work that way. Why do we have a tendency to acquire habit, and why do they become integral part of who we are? But I want to talk about one very important concept about habits. This is the idea of a keystone habit. The idea of keystone literally come from, keystone that we use in construction of buildings. Well, we don't use it anymore. People used to use it. So just going on a tangent for a second, the way, if you've seen those big arches that these ancient forts have, you will notice that the arch is going to be U-shaped. There are these heavy stones, which are stacked one after another. And there is a big stone, which is kind of V-shaped, which is at the center. So the thing about the keystone, the literal, keystone or capstone, is that without the keystone puts the entire arch, it locks it in place. Without the keystone, the entire arch will fall down, because keystone forces each subsequent stone to support each other, and ultimately the pressure transfers all the way down to the bottommost stone, which is supported on pillar. So literally the job a keystone does is to hold everything together. So I really like that analogy. I think recognizing one's keystone habit is very important. Keystone habits could be positive or negative. Another example of positive keystone habit is working out in the morning. I know so many people, for them, if they can manage to work out in the morning, they just feel great about the day. You feel like I've already conquered my day. I can do whatever I want to do. I'm a huge fan of this podcast by Dr. Andrew Huberman. He talks about, if in the morning you can do one physically challenging activity, for example, workout or a long run, or if you can do a intellectually challenging activity, it could be writing for an hour, it could be solving key problem at work. You feel, it's already just 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. You're already feeling you've done great things about your day. So workout is another, powerful keystone habit. Negative keystone habits, unfortunately in Bangalore, what is all too common is we have a huge pub culture. Pretty much every street has this mega giant pubs, with who knows, capacity of 1,000, 2,000 people, and they're buzzing all the time. And the culture in a lot of companies in Bangalore is becoming that, you finish your work, 8 p.m., you head to one of those pubs and you watch something on television, have a few drinks. But in that process, easily you will come home by 11 or 12. The challenge with that is, we know that alcohol is quite detrimental to sleep. The sleep quality goes for a toss. We have different sleep stages, and at some point I'm going to do very detailed episode on sleep, because sleep is that so important to overall well-being and health and the process of creating impact. But when you're hanging out in the evening because of alcohol, sleeping late, your sleep goes for a toss. Next day you will get up feeling groggy, maybe you have a little bit of headache or hangover, and you will just not have a great day. And because you don't have a great day, when the day ends, you are feeling very meh, and maybe you will end up going to a pub again, and the whole cycle will repeat. Another version of negative keystone is the habit of binge watching that these days pretty much most of us are almost addicted to. You start watching, let's say, uh, first episode of season 5 of something, and the episode obviously always ends on a cliffhanger. You're very curious about what is going to happen next, and Netflix will make it very easy for you. You don't even have to play next. It'll autoplay the next episode. And so you say, okay, what's another 20-30 minutes? You end up finishing second episode, and before you know it, you spend 3 or 4 hours binge watching something, and it's already 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You are starting to, the moment the series ends, that dopamine starts to reduce, and you're already kind of cursing yourself, how could you again watch, content for 3 hours non-stop? You are feeling your mind is so awake, you don't know how to fall asleep, and somehow you manage to go through a night, and maybe, next day the whole cycle repeats again. So what keystone habit means, while we have lots of habit, all of us have probably hundreds of habits who drive and shape who we are. Some habits are particularly important because they have a profound ripple effect. What I mean by ripple effect is that by virtue of having that habit, a lot of other things automatically follow. So for me, that keystone habit has been sleeping at 9 p.m. Yeah, I know sleeping at 9 p.m. might sound weird, and there was a time I used to sleep at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., even 2 a.m. But different things happened over a period of time where I eventually ended up building this habit of sleeping at 9 p.m. Initially, it was not easy at all. The trigger for me was when, I used to work out regularly, and my typical workout time was either morning 8 a.m. or evening 6, even 7 p.m. But when I started Myntra and my daughter started going to school, so in the morning, I have to help her get ready for school. That process will start around 6 a.m. or so. Then I'll go to office. Myntra early days, things were challenging. We were working 10, 12 hours a day. So pretty much whole day will go into that. And I kind of got out of habit of working out for almost a year. At some point, I decided the only way I can have a regular workout habit is to work out at 5:30 in the morning. Now, how do you work out 5:30 in the morning? You need to be well rested. My daughter used to sleep by 8:30, so I thought probably best thing for me to do is the moment she goes to sleep, right after that, I can also try going to sleep. It was very difficult. I'll have all kind of distractions, spend time on phone, try to read a book, or call some of the colleagues, and even have a, kind of phone call at 9 or even 10 p.m. But somehow I worked through that and started forcing myself to just be in bed by 9 p.m. After I was able to do it for a while, I would automatically start getting up at 5 a.m. Getting up at 5 a.m. means I'll be able to show up in the gym by 5:30. I'll do a decent workout between 5:30 to 6:30, be back home in time to help my daughter get ready. And the moment she will leave for school by 7:15, I'll realize I've already finished my workout. I have my whole day in front of me to plan whatever I want to do, almost kind of get a early start for the work I want to do. And also feeling really good about myself because I'd worked out. With workout, you have these endorphin releases. You just feel, this burst of energy. So I started liking that feeling. Over a period of time, sleeping at 9 p.m. became a habit for me. And, things will tend to go really well. But then sometime life events will happen and that habit will fall off. So for example, when pandemic happened, slowly we all got used to doing Zoom calls. Sometimes Zoom calls will happen late in the evening. Around COVID time, we were doing an acquisition in US. So I will end up having a lot of calls late in the evening, and slowly my sleep time started shifting back. But I noticed that as my sleep time went back to 11 or 12 a.m., it started to have a ripple effect on rest of my day. I will inevitably either miss my workout in the morning, Even if I work out, if I force myself to work out, I will not feel same energy. I'll have to force myself through some kind of workout. Post workout, I'll just feel really, quite uh, lethargic, not pumped up, will not be able to focus on my work, and just overall have a very average day. So, having gone through this cycle multiple times, eventually I realized for me personally, sleep is that keystone habit. If I manage to sleep by 9 p.m., a lot of good things happen in my day. If I fail to sleep by 9 p.m., and sometime it will also happen because of some kind of social outing, uh, you know, if you hang out with your office colleagues or friends, usually you will go out by 7, 8, you'll come back by 11, probably after a few drinks. And again, this vicious cycle will repeat. So eventually I had this realization that personally for me, sleep is that keystone habit. If I can just do one single thing in my life right, which is to go to bed at 9 p.m., so many other habits automatically happen. Working out in the morning, meditation in the morning, being focused at work, able to deal with stress at work, and so on. So it's very important to pay attention to what are these positive or negative keystone habits. Everything we're going to discuss about habit is not going to be relevant unless you are able to isolate these important keystone habits. So one tool I would like to suggest everyone is to introspect. You can pause this podcast right now, take 5 minutes and think about what is that keystone habit that triggers a lot of positive things in your life or triggers a lot of negative things in your life. If there is something positive, just awareness of that is great, because then you can be productive about it. Now I am aware of sleeping at 9 p.m. as a keystone habit. So I go to any length to protect that, to the extent where I really try to have all my social meetings over breakfast or lunch and avoid, evening going out, because it affects my keystone habit. So think about what that keystone habit for you is. It could be meditation. It could even be fasting. Every time you fast, maybe great things happen to you subsequently. What are negative keystone habits? What are the set patterns you keep falling into, which triggers cascade of negative things, which, in some ways help repeat the whole cycle. If you can recognize that, if it is a good keystone habit, by all means nurture it, protect it. If it is a bad keystone habit, then you'll have to work hard at changing it. It's not going to be easy at all. I think we'll talk a little later about what you can do to come out of bad habit patterns. But all change starts with awareness. If you don't even know what those negative patterns are, there's no chance you can break out of those. So think about it, write it down, and make a mental note. It should either look like I have this positive keystone habit I want to nurture, or I want to build this positive keystone habit. Later on, I'll talk to you about a lot of different examples of great habits we can think about adding to your lifestyle. Or these are my negative keystone habits that I want to do something about it. We'll together go through what you can do to break out those negative habit patterns. So every time I keep saying, we are a bundle of habits, the obvious question emerges, why? Why is it that we are all wired so deeply to be these creatures of habit? There is very strong evolutionary reason for that. Habits evolved over a period of time as an energy saving device. So what happens in our brain has all these different compartments. There are things, that we have to consciously make a choice. If I ask you a question right now, would you want your coffee with cream or no cream? You'll have to think about that, especially if you're not a habitual coffee drinker. You may even think about whether you want to have a coffee at this time or not. This is a conscious thought process for which you have to spend some brain cycles on. Thinking about something and making decision consumes energy. But there's so many things that happens in our body throughout the day. For example, you are not making a choice about how fast to make your heart beat, or whether you want to slow down your breathing or speed up your breathing. These are all conscious processes. Your brain is still dictating all these things. Brain sends a signal to all these organs to do their job, and regulate to some extent. So that's understanding, brain has this conscious thought process where we deliberately make a decision, which is very energy consuming, and brain has, much bigger part where a lot of this decision making is on autopilot. So habits is a hack into that autonomous part of our brain where we don't have to think about it. One easy way to illustrate this, how we think about learning any new skill. Initially, when you try to learn to ride a cycle, you have to pay a lot of attention. You have to continuously balance. You are either falling right side or left side, and you are, continuously adjusting your weight, shifting, trying to somehow balance and hold on to the cycle. But eventually, and that is requiring a lot of conscious thought process, a lot of paying attention to what you're doing. You obviously cannot have a conversation with somebody who are trying to learn how to ride a bicycle, or you can't obviously, text and ride a cycle. But once you learn how to ride a cycle, what has happened is a lot of that learning has gone part into your unconscious part of your brain. Once the skill is acquired, it gets transferred, and you don't have to think about this anymore. You just hop onto any cycle, even the cycles you have never seen, and your brain know what it needs to do. While you can actually, if you choose to, you can be listening to a song or an audiobook or have a conversation with somebody else who is riding alongside you. So that's an example of something going from your conscious brain to subconscious brain. So that's exactly how habits work. So if you study humans' evolutionary history, when you are out there in the jungle living as a hunter-gatherer, there are a lot of things that need to happen during your day. You have a lot of, big things to watch out for. You need to somehow find a food when food was really scarce. You need to make sure you don't walk into danger, because danger was lurking everywhere. It was a struggle to survive. You have to find a mate, so you have to behave in a certain manner, project yourself in a certain way. That has not changed, from hunter-gathering society till now. But these are some of the important things, which required for a continuation of life. And if every day you have to think about all of those things, it will consume too much energy. But energy was always scarce. So we evolved this mechanism of habit formation, and it predates human beings. In fact, most animal species have their own habitual patterns. We have these migratory birds. Some of them migrate all the way from North Pole to equator. They take this 20,000 kilometer long journey twice every year. It's a habitual pattern. Most animals in the wild, they have these habitual patterns of going to a particular watering hole or going to a salt lake. Salt is absolutely critical to life. So just as a habit, they end up doing these things. So as mammals and later as humans, we evolved to become very good at acquiring habits so that we don't have to think about those things. And because of the habits we've acquired, we are able to save so much energy during the day. Imagine that if you have to make a decision every single day, how much energy you will consume. In fact, we see a lot of people go out of their way to avoid having to make decisions. We all know about Steve Jobs, that he will wear this black turtleneck sweater every single day. What was his rationale for that? He said, no, I don't want to be in my wardrobe in the morning thinking about, whether I should wear this red shirt or a blue shirt or, what kind of look to put together. He obviously can do that, but it consumes tiny bit of conscious brain energy, which he was trying to avoid. Mark Zuckerberg, he pretty much, wears gray t-shirt to work every single day. And again, he doesn't have to think about it. And of course, he can afford to have, a few hundred gray round neck t-shirts, right? But one needs to recognize that every time you make a conscious decision, it will consume energy. It will fatigue you. Your ability to decision making will dwindle. Your willpower will go down, and you will be a lot more tempted to give into whatever temptation happen to be around. So habits is something, which bypasses that. Anything which is a habitual behavior. So for example, I like drinking my black coffee in the morning, but I never make a decision. I just walk up to coffee machine, pour hot water, grinded coffee powder in the machine, and just without thinking about drinking coffee, I'm thinking about probably something else, but I'm doing that. Instead, if I have to make a decision whether should I have a coffee today or not have a coffee today, that's going to consume that thinking process. So habits is a shortcut to avoid all the decision making, and our bodies and brains have become extremely good into hacking into this habit pattern. And and if you analyze, your 24 hours, and chances are 95% of what is going to happen your day to day is a function of habit that you've acquired at some point in life. Where do these habits come from? So we are picking up habits from our environment all the time. A lot of habits are picked up from our parents. So if you think about, whether you're a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, your breakfast is, aloo paratha or idli, it's a function of probably where you grew up. It's deeply ingrained habit. It's not like someone who eats idli or dosa cannot enjoy aloo paratha or vice versa. But we acquired these habits from our parents, from the environment we were in, and now it's become part of who we are. We pick up a lot of habits during college days. Suddenly we are outside our home. We are in touch with a lot of interesting people from all parts of the country, and some of them we find really cool behaviors or habits, and we start to mimic those. And before we know it, those becomes part of our habit. A lot of people's music taste change during college days, because you discover what is the more cooler music compared to what you were used to listening to. Or your roommate might have a particular habit. For example, in my early career, my roommate Samir, he was in the habit of going to gym regularly, and then I started following him along and acquired this habit to go to gym, which has stayed with me till this date. It is great to Samir that I've been basically going to gym for last 25 years. So we are continuously observing these habits. Sometime when we change a job and start a new job, each office environment has a particular culture, and we start to imbibe that culture. So for example, when I was working in Silicon Valley, the culture there was most people will amble in to work between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Before that, I worked for a consulting company, and there it was expected you need to be in office at 9 a.m. sharp or before. So I was used to that, but within a matter of few months, I assimilated that habit, and I also started going to work after midday and come home late in the evening. So we have this ability to continue to absorb habits from our system, and that's how our default autopilot habits accumulate. But is every single habit working for you or against you? You may not know unless you consciously pay attention to that. In fact, a lot of marketeers that hijack this ability we have to form habits to impose habits they would like us to have. For example, this Snickers ad you might have seen, that hungry kya, almost trying to create a habit that at 3 or 4 p.m. when you feel some little bit of hunger craving, you can go for the Snicker, which is absolutely sugar and calories packed. But if you become a habitual Snicker eater, at 4 p.m., then the company sorted, that now you become a lifelong customer. You're going to spend so much money every week, every year. So marketers are continuously looking to see how can they get us hooked to a new habit. In fact, they are a deep student of studying how habits form. There was this lab called Persuasion Lab, which started in Stanford in early 2000s. This famous Stanford professor, B.J. Fogg, he started this lab. A lot of people who have done cutting-edge pioneering work around how to build this habit-forming product, whether those are social media product or gaming products, have studied in B.J. Fogg's lab. They take advantage of absolutely cutting-edge behavioral psychology to create those cues to trigger that habit loop, which we are able to, if somehow we are able to get accustomed to, then it becomes an ingrained part of things we consume on a habitual basis. He in some way started this whole movement. His book is Tiny Habits. He has done a lot of work around that. Later on, Charles Duhigg, he has his book Power of Habit, and recently Atomic Habit, which is one of the biggest best-selling habit book of all time. So there you are, you have all these habits which pretty much governs what happens during your day. Most of your habits you've acquired from your parents, from your friends, from the college you went to, from various companies you might have worked on, habits from your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, or even from your role models that you may have watched, or many habits might have been imprinted on you by these really smart marketeers who today understand everything about behavioral psychology. But if you want to take control of your life, if you want to be who you want to be, then you have to take control of your habits. The only way to be different than who you are, and you don't have to be different if you're very happy with who you are, great. You probably already have tons of really good habits. But most of us have unfulfilled dreams. We want to do different things. We have some expectations. We are also evolving. What might have worked great for me in 20s may not work in my 30s or 40s anymore. But how do I become a different person? If I'm somebody who was not working out, but I now want to start working out, I need to make a habit change. If they have certain, dietary pattern, maybe I'm used to evening snacks, which are mostly sugars and carb and salty snacks, and I want to give up that habit. You'll have to learn how habits are formed, how can you break habits, and create that environment for you where you are in charge of building habits, breaking habits. Being able to build and break habits one habit at a time can profoundly change who you are. 5 years down the line, after you have broken down 10 existing habits and built 10 new habits, you can be a dramatically different person. I think mastering habit is kind of absolute superpower. It pretty much gives a license to be whoever you want to be. If you think about the question of who do you want to be when you grow up, right? And we are all growing up all the time. The only way to answer that is by changing our habits. If I want to be something different or someone different, 5 years down the line, I need to take control of my habits and actively work on how to make or break habits by understanding science of habit. So we have talked about the importance of habits, how habits play a very critical role. But how does one build a new habit? And more importantly, how does one sustain a habit over a long period of time? Fortunately, the science of habit is very well understood. Most habit researchers, break it down that fundamentally it comes down to this habit loop, which is 3 parts. The first part is cue. Cue is the initial trigger, something that reminds you that you can take an action. The example of a trigger is the notification on your phone, which is cueing you to potentially look into your phone. Action is what you do when that cue happens. The moment you see the cue, the immediate next step you're likely to take. So in the case of phone, you'll pick up your phone and check into your WhatsApp or email to what the next message is. And the last part of habit loop is reward. Reward is what you do as a result of action you do. So the reward in the example of picking a phone is you get to read that new WhatsApp message. Maybe you are anticipating a message or reply from somebody over WhatsApp or email. So that's your reward. And that tiny bit of reward gives you this dopamine hit. You feel good. In fact, in this example, because the reward itself is variable, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get a reply, you might not. So there is also the built-in anticipation. And when that anticipation gets resolved, the kick is even higher. So every time this cue, action, reward cycle repeat, the habit loop keeps getting stronger and stronger. At some point, it becomes absolute autopilot. The brain already knows when this cue happens, I do the action. So today, most of the time, when you do get that notification on your phone, you are not going to actively think about where you're going to pick up the phone or not. Obviously, you'll just pick up the phone, you will consume your reward, which is the message, you will get your dopamine kick and put the phone down and so on. And, it's crazy how many times this cycle can repeat in a day. When we look at the data about how many times people pick up their phone during the day, it's anywhere from 100 to 200 times. There's literally every 2 minutes to 5 minutes of waking hours. But that's one example. So understanding the cycle, now you can work with this. For any habit you want to work, you'll have to design adequate cues. I'll give some examples. So for not recently, last year, I wanted to build a habit of listening to some of the podcasts that I really like, Lex Friedman and Huberman Labs. So what I did, I designed the cue that, I wanted to listen to podcasts while working out in the gym. And I start my gym routine from treadmill. So what I did was I put the small speaker on the treadmill itself. So whether I remember or not, but the moment I step into treadmill, which is almost a given, I already had the habit of going to gym and starting my workout with the treadmill. So I will see this little speaker that will act as a reminder. That's my cue that I had put in there because I want to listen to podcasts. So I'll, pull out my phone, play the podcast and start my walking. And, during my gym hours, I'll end up listening to podcasts for maybe 45 minutes or 1 hour. Now that I have done it for over a year, it has become an autopilot behavior. I don't need to remind myself. In fact, if for whatever reason that speaker is not there, I look for it because, my brain knows the act of walking to gym, stepping to treadmill is it's expecting, that podcast listening session to commence at that point. So whatever habit you want to build, thinking through in terms of what those initial cue that you can create. People talk about habit stacking. So the idea of habit stacking is that layering a new habit on top of one that you already have. For example, if you want to build a habit of going out for a morning walk, and let's say, or rather, let's hope you have a habit of brushing your teeth in the morning. So that's, something that happens every day. I'm sure you don't get up and think about whether I should brush today or not, or feeling too lazy. It's just something, without even thinking about it, you amble into your washroom, you pick up your brush and, toothpaste and start brushing your teeth. Now, you might forget that you're trying to build a new habit of going out for a walk. So why don't you take your running shoes the day before and keep it right next to where your toothpaste and brush is, or even put your paste on top of your running shoes. So the morning when you go, you will see, and then you will realize the shoes are there for a reason. That's a reminder, for you to put on your shoes. And if you have a reluctance about, you might feel that you don't have half an hour, 1 hour, you break it down. You say, I'm going to just go out for a walk for 5 minutes. Now, how difficult can that be? Just put on your shoes. You already have your reminder. Your action is going out for that 5 minute or 10 minute walk. And reward is you will feel pretty good, about having taken that first initial step towards building a habit. So we can take those small baby steps. Now, the trick is, it's not going to be easy. In the first few days or few weeks, it's going to be difficult. Chances are you might forget to do this next day. So, that 6 to 8 week window is very crucial. Most habit researchers, talk about the fact that it takes anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks to build a new habit. So we need to have very strong regimen for those 6 to 12 weeks. You'll have to have some kind of internal accountability mechanism, or even better, external accountability mechanism. What is external accountability? You can have, let's say, you want to build a habit of working out, and you can sign up somebody in your circle saying, we are going to work out together. Now your buddy can hold you accountable. That day you don't want to work out, that person wants to go work out. Other way, what a lot of people do is you sign up for a personal trainer for 2 months, and you ask the person to show up at your doorstep, every day at 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. or evening 6 p.m. if that's what you want to do. Now you have somebody else to be accountable for. Even if you don't remember, this other person reminding you becomes your very strong cue and also accountable threshold. So with that, if you are able to do, you will notice subtle changes within few weeks itself. You will start to feel that internal tug or pull to do that activity, and that's a sign of that habit is starting to form. So it's about creating those cues which act as a reminder or accountability, taking that action. And it's also important to reflect on that. So now imagine you are able to do your first class, second class. Take 5 minutes at the end of that workout class and remind yourself that this is a new behavior you are able to do. Try to recreate the emotion of feeling happy for having taken the action which was very hard for you. So that will create that positive dopamine feeling, completing one loop of cue, action, reward. Reward being you patting yourself on the back, reminding yourself that now you have taken the first step towards a habit you want to build. Looking at a much longer time horizon, the way I see the habits play out, it's 3 distinct phases. When you decide initially that you want to build a habit, you have to rely a lot on willpower. That's not easy at all. That's where most people struggle, and therefore creating very, very powerful cues and creating very strong accountability mechanism and deep diving into your own willpower is going to get you past the initial hump. If you are able to do that for 4 weeks, it will start to show some signs of being autopilot behavior, but you are far from done. But you are somehow able to continue for another couple of months, the habits start to become fairly robust. And then from there on, habit will take over, and assuming no major break happens and you are able to continue this for say 6 months, 12 months, over a long period of time, it will start to become part of your identity. When it becomes part of your identity, then it's very, very difficult to break the habit. For example, someone whose identity is that of being a vegetarian, they will never get tempted to have some non-veg food for fun. In fact, they'll go out of their way to make sure they avoid. Similarly, people who don't drink, it's part of their identity. I'm kind of getting there, so I gave up drinking alcohol last year. It was definitely not easy. Again, took me many years to get to that point. But after giving up alcohol, and first 3-6 months, I would still get tempted. For me, the cue was, a lot of time I travel. When I'm, go back to my hotel room by 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., nothing else to do. And that's a very powerful cue to either use the hotel room minibar that most hotels these days have, or through room service, order a drink. But I had to fight that urge, for a while. But now it's starting to become part of my identity, and I'm coming close to nearly a year of not drinking. And I think if I can continue for another year or so, I'll become somebody who does not drink. then there is no temptation. It does not matter whether social occasion, we are celebrating something or walking into hotel room or, I don't know, doing a winery tour in Napa Valley. It doesn't matter, what that is. So this whole journey of relying very heavily on willpower, over first few months, translating that willpower into a habit, which will be an autopilot behavior, and taking the habit all the way to your identity. That's probably most robust way of ensuring that habits becomes deeply ingrained part of you, who you are. Now, just because something's a habit does not mean that you will not fall off. Workout is one example that most people take. Even if you work out for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, sometimes you tend to fall off. We see that a lot in the cult journey. A lot of people sign up with a lot of enthusiasm. People want to incorporate workout in their daily routines, and somehow they are able to, with that initial willpower and all the support they get at cult, they're able to come to gym regularly for 3-4 months. Then some life event happens. Sometimes it's travel. So when you're traveling, a lot of people lose out their habit of working out. Sometimes some life event, you fall sick, or somebody else in the family is sick, or sometimes there is a work situation that you need to manage. You're putting in long hours, and when you miss your workout for 1, 2, 3 weeks, then that inertia gets hold of you. Taking that baby step to go back for one workout is very hard. What you can do in those situations is have some kind of startup ritual. And what I mean by startup ritual is, let's say you say that I'm struggling to get back into a habit of working out, but what I can do is just put on my workout shoes and just go to gym. I'm going to go to gym, watch other people work out, and come back home. Like, now the inertia is not very high. A lot of long distance runners use this technique. I've used, in fact, when I started to do long distance running, where after 10 kilometers, you don't want to run. So I'll say myself, I'm going to just run another 200 meters and I'm quit. But when you do those 200 meters, you feel little bit motivation. You say, again, I'm going to do 200 meters more and quit. And before you know it, you might have done another 4 or 5 kilometers. So if you are able to just go to gym only to watch other people work out, for a few days, you will feel, that start to feel that energy. You will reconnect with the feeling you had when you were working out before, and you will be able to probably take, just easy 10 or 15 minute workout. One of the easiest thing to do in a gym, just step on a treadmill, put it on a 4 kilometer per hour and just walk for 5 or 10 minutes. You automatically start to feel better. So figuring out, when you're falling off the wagon, when a habit is starting to break off, and then finding these, circuit breakers where you go back and reconnect with the feeling is probably best to restart. If you already had a habit, and when you restart, it will not take you next 6 to 8 weeks to get back into the habit. Just even if you are able to do it for a week or 2 weeks in a row, you will be able to find that habit much faster compared to first time around. So just understanding this larger framework of if you don't do anything, doing it will certainly require tapping into willpower. But you can also make life easy by changing your environment accordingly. Because a lot of autopilot behavior happens because of our environment. So for example, if you're in a habit of eating something that you don't want to eat anymore, if it is readily available in your home or at your office or in your fridge, chances are when you're feeling tempted and distracted, or just automatic like a zombie, walk up to the fridge, pull out that tub of ice cream, and before you know it, finish half of it, right? But if you just stop stocking it, when you are in a good mood, when you're doing your grocery shopping, you ensure that you just eliminate. So that if you really feel, that urge, you'll have to do a lot of extra effort. So now you create a lot of hurdles in between. I have seen that example in Cure.Fit. We used to have this large cookie jars in all cafeteria. Now they're supposedly, healthy atta biscuit, but if you look into the ingredients, it's still, full of sugar and refined carbohydrates, which shoots up your glycemic index. Immediately they were kept on this counter, visibly. So when you are come out of a stressful meeting or your afternoon energy starting to dip, there is the temptation to walk into, that cookie jar and pick up 2. Sometimes 2 becomes 4 or 6, and you don't even realize, but you have consumed that. So now what I have done is, we have kept those cookie jars are still there, but they're kept away from, they're not in your line of sight. So you have to kind of go around the kitchen counter, look for it, in different shelves, and you can still find it. And the consumption has gone down by, I think nearly 80-85% with just simple changing the, office environment. In the book Nudge, the author talks about, how this lot of organizations, how they can bake in some of the smaller changes to make it easier to adopt a good habit and to make it much harder to do an action which is harmful for you. By making these incremental environmental nudges, one can make it easier for people to develop better habits and get rid of bad habits. If you are in a position where you're responsible for a team or an organization, there's a lot you can change in your environment. Of course, you can make a lot of changes at your home itself. For example, at my home, I don't really stock any junk food at all. It's just not available. It does not mean I don't feel tempted about junk food, but I'll have to put in that much extra effort. So you can leverage your environment to make the process of building a new habit a lot easier. So at this point in the episode, I think we have covered a lot about why habits are important, why habits evolved, how habits work as an energy saving device, the idea of habit loop for building new habits or for breaking habits. But still, the fact remains that habit change is hard. It's not easy for anyone. So let me talk about some other things, which can have a significant impact in moving you towards the habit change goals you want to make. One is this idea that I call grand gestures. What is grand gesture? It's doing something big and profound. It's a much larger than 10x or 100x bigger than the habit change you want to do. Let me take some example. Actually, let me start with some of the things that I rely on. Sometimes I'm traveling and my food habits go for a toss. I eat whatever is available, while I want to do intermittent fasting, but I might end up eating 3-4 times during the day. And after 4-5 days, feeling not that great. After I come back, I'll probably do a 24-hour fast or a 36-hour fast. Now, it's not easy, but I'll just take this up as a challenge. I'll say I'm just not going to touch food for next 24 hours. And because I do intermittent fasting, I'm used to not eating for 16-18 hours. So it's not that big of a deal. But just the act of not eating for 24 hours acts as a very strong reminder that I can do it. You start to feel good about having done that thing. It only takes a day. And then that much more motivated to get back to my regular diet routine from the day onwards. Similarly for workout, if you're out of workout habit or trying to build a workout habit, let's say, you take half a day, perhaps on a Saturday, you say, I'm going to be very active for 6 hours. Now that's crazy. You regularly want to work out just 1 hour a day. But what does being active for 6 hours means? Maybe let's say in the morning you go for a slow walk or jog or run and just walk for an hour or even 2 hours. Then go to the gym, have a very light workout, but stand there 1 hour in the gym. Maybe you're done with that at 10 a.m. Then do a yoga class. You can do again outside the gym or at home. Just dedicating that 6 hours for this act of working out, it will recondition yourself very strongly. Your memory of having done that will be that much strong on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So it's automatically cueing or priming your body to be able to do that. If let's say you've been wanting to write a book, it's been a long time and you have not written any word at all. How about taking 3 or 4 days off? We all routinely take 3-4 days off for a vacation. How about you take a writing break for 3-4 days where you clean up everything in your calendar. Let's say it's a Thursday morning and you tell yourself, I'm going to write as many words as possible, maybe 10,000 words. Now put this in perspective, 10,000 words is about 10% of the way to write a book. And most good authors write between 1,000 to 3,000 words a day. So it's not big of a deal. And you give yourself further license. I'm not going to care about the quality of what I'm going to write. In fact, I'm going to throw away whatever I'm going to write. But just, multiple times in a day during those 4-day windows, sit down in front of your laptop and write whatever comes to your mind. You're not looking for quality. You're just looking for quantity. But having written those 10,000 words, your confidence in your ability to sit down and write something will go up significantly. So you can intersperse, these grand gestures every now and then. You don't have to do it every week, but even every few months, or once or twice a year can give that very strong jolt, very strong boost to be on your way of making that profound habit change. We have a lot of these natural opportunities in our calendar. So it's, our day is structured in 24-hour window, our week is structured in 7 days, month is 31st days, where there's natural holidays, long weekends, you have birthdays, anniversaries, New Year. So all these dates are great time to start something new. You don't have to wait for the New Year only for the resolutions. You can have these resolutions throughout the year. So if you look at, these opportunities of starting something new or stopping something, coinciding that with a particular date, it's also, creates a little more meaning for you and also acts as a reminder. So you can, use your weekend very effectively, or start of the month, that this month I'm going to sign up for a challenge to either do something for next 30 days if it is a positive habit, or not do something for 30 days. If that is too much, you can do same week. On Sunday, you can decide, write it down, remind yourself multiple times, tell people around you, and just a simple challenge of not doing that thing for next 7 days. It's difficult, but not impossible. And when you do it, you feel so great about yourself. This can create, you can create some kind of streak in your life. Streak becomes something you become very vested in. So what do we know about the science of habit? I'll share the framework I use. For any habit change, I think the hardest part is putting in first 10 hours. If it is a habit about going to a gym, you may want to, or your desire may be to build it a lifelong habit, but that's not going to happen overnight. Can you just create a 2-week plan or 3-week plan where you just want to, your simple milestone of hitting first 10 hours? It doesn't matter what you do. You can work out or you may not work out. Just can you spend 10 hours in a gym? Or if your habit is to build, to start doing meditation regularly, can you just stay with your meditation app 10 minutes a day for 10 days? Getting past the initial hump gives you a lot of feedback. It also gives you a lot of confidence. If you are able to do those 10 activities or 10 hours, then after that, focus on next 10 hours or next 10 activities and so on. If you manage to cross 100 hours, it will become deeply ingrained habit. So it's just, that's the hard part. Now, how do we put in that hard part? Let's come back to this cue action reward mechanism, both for good habits that you want to build or bad habits you want to break. So let's say if you're somebody who is not active at all, but you want to become active, you decide whether you want to do in morning or evening. Let's say you pick morning. Now, what may happen is you are thinking about building fitness as a habit in the morning now, but when you get up in the morning, you will be in a different set of mindset because you're used to a different routine. So you need some kind of reminder or some kind of cue. So do something dramatic. For example, you can put your running shoes on your, on top of your laptop, so that the moment if, morning you go to your desk and you see your running shoes there as a reminder. So there is no chance you will forget that you're supposed to do something. So put on your running shoes, go outdoors or go to a gym for some time and come back. And when you're done, you again leave back your clean running shoes again on top of your laptop, on your desk or by your bedside table, something where you will not forget to see that. So you are trying to build that cue. Similarly, if you want to have a meditation habit, let's say you want to meditate for 9 minutes, for 10 minutes every day at 9 a.m., you set an alarm on your phone with a meditation music. You can change the ringtone. So find something meditative, set an alarm for 9 a.m. That becomes your cue. When the meditation music goes off automatically, then you know that you're supposed to at least sit down for 10 minutes and meditate on your own or with an app. We'll talk about meditation and how to learn meditating in a lot more detail in one of the subsequent podcasts. But, that's another example of putting a cue. If you're somebody, let's say, you have temptation to raid the fridge late at night for, ice cream or something, you can put a big post-it note where write something, dramatic on that, no-go zone after 10 p.m. So every time you open the refrigerator, at least you will see that, and maybe that will act as a cue that reminds you there's something you don't want to do. Take some time, identify a habit that you want to build, and then try to design what is the right cue, which will not fail to remind you. When the time comes, somewhere you need that external support or external push to remind you. When you get that cue, what is the action you want to take? When you take that action, how will you feel great about having taken that action? And if you manage to repeat this cycle for as little as 4 weeks, in some cases 8 weeks or 12 weeks, great things will happen. At some point, nobody will need to remind you to do that. That's the power of habit. That's the magic of building these habits. So since we are having this podcast, today's episode about habit, let's mutually make a pact of making one big habit change. I'll start first. I really want to have to build a habit around this podcast where, I have a busy schedule. I have a lot going on. My work is really important for me. So I want to be able to do this podcast in an efficient manner. So the habit I want to build is after I'm done with my morning workout and meditation, just reserve 1 hour either to do research or read the script or actually shoot like I'm doing right now. And if I can do that 5 days a week, I think we can very easily stick to the schedule of producing one podcast every week. So I'm going to work on that habit. You should think about what is the habit you can start today. I think we are talking a lot about science of habit building and so on, but beyond entertainment is not going to be useful unless you are able to translate into one habit change you are going to start working on it today. It could be anything. It could be workout related, meditation related, reading related. Maybe you want to make one change in your diet. That change could be maybe preponing your eating time from 8 p.m. in the evening to 7 p.m. Or it's about maybe eliminating the afternoon snacking. Whatever it is, I can't pick the habit for you. You pick what is a habit change, and then immediately, do the work of translating that into what are the cues which can act as reminder to either do some new action for a new habit, or cues that can remind you to not take an action for a bad habit. And when you successfully complete that action or not take that action because you're trying to break a habit, reward yourself some way, acknowledge that, feel good about that, and try to make the cycle repeat again and again. If you are able to make one successful habit change by virtue of listening to this podcast, I think it'll be a tremendous success, because you will not only make that one habit change, but you will also learn what it takes to make a habit change. And that is a superpower. I would like all of us to have that superpower where we can make habit change at will. If you can learn the science of habit building, you can learn how to create that virtuous cycle of building a new habit, or how to break out of a negative habit cycle. You can slowly transform yourself. You will be somewhat different 3 months down the line because you have one new habit. Then maybe you add one more habit. So 6 months down the line, maybe you are somebody who now does evening journaling, or someone who goes for a morning walk, or someone who does not eat dessert every single time, go out, or, whatever habit change you want to make. Year down the line, you would have made 4 or 5 habit changes, and you will feel very confident about being able to make those habit change. And these habits for you will compound over a period of time. If you keep making habit changes, if I take my today's version and over next 2-3 years, I add bunch of habits which I believe are good for me at this stage of my life, and eliminate things which are not good for me at this stage of life, after a few years, I'll be a different person. And that is the power of habit. And what's most beautiful about that is you don't even have to work hard at it once the habit is formed. Your brain is so powerful, its energy saving mechanism will take over. It will become autopilot ingrained habit. Today, some of the good habits in my life, I don't have to do anything about it. Almost on autopilot mode, I finish everything I need to do by 7 p.m. I go to bed by 9 p.m. I am at gym 6 a.m. I am meditating at 7:30 a.m. It obviously wasn't that easy, but I built this habit slowly over a period of time. Sometimes I still struggle with keeping those habits. You can easily fall out of a habit. So how do you bounce back and restart the habit is also very important. But the key thing to keep in mind is by making slow habit changes, you can completely transform yourself. One tool I really like, it takes some time and effort, but you can consider doing this, what I call this, 10 pages for next 10 years of your life. So what this tool means is find 2-3 hours, you can do it weekday, evening or a weekend, and try to write 10 pages about your life over 10 years. It could be anything. It could be a list of things you want to do, professional outcome you want to achieve, or a creative output you want to produce, or place in the world you want to visit, or a future version of yourself. How do you visualize yourself 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? Anything about your life, just fill up those 10 pages. The format doesn't matter, what you write doesn't matter, but what you're doing is you're deliberately thinking about your life over next 10 years. You should be able to write 10 pages worth of content of who you want to be over next 10 years. What that will do is they'll create a mental template, a picture of your future self. Using that picture, you can slowly break it down that, for me to be that person, I need to make habit 1, habit 2, habit 3. So the reason this exercise is useful is you're not randomly coming up with the habit changes you want to make. You will make choices which are very closely related to who you want to be. Let's take an example. Let's say you are 35-year-old and you imagine your future self 10 years down the line is someone who is able to do all these amazing treks around the world. Now, trekking is a physically exhausting activity. It requires a lot of stamina. You need to be fit. And if you're somebody who is not working out today, you clearly, you need to build a habit of some kind of workout. You can slowly build upon it to build more stamina, but your future self requires you to build that habit today. If you want to, maybe somebody who wants to retire 15 years down the line. So you need to think about, what kind of financial equation you need to have for yourself. For that, you might need to start some habit for saving money or investing or earning additional supplementary income. But the cues for the habit you need to build need to come from future. If you come from a family with any kind of lifestyle diseases, in India, we have a lot of people are diabetic. Diabetes is both genetic and lifestyle disease. But if you have most people in a family tend to get pre-diabetic or diabetic in their 40s and 50s, and you don't want to get there, you need to make your diet changes today. So write those 10 pages for next 10 years of your life. Then translate that into what are the habits you can start building today. And don't start with 5 habits. No one can do that. It's not possible. You will fail in everything. Just start with 1 habit or 2. If you are really ambitious, you think, you have that inordinate willpower. Okay, maybe, you can start with 2 habits, I tend to start with just 1 at a time. And you can layer those on, maybe a few weeks down the line after you've made progress with habit 1, you can start making progress habit 2. And as make one significant habit change, your self-image will become so positive. You'll get so much more confidence in yourself. You would have learned, what are the bottlenecks, what are the struggles in making habit change, but also how do you de-bottleneck, how do you become somebody who is able to make that habit change. And then just let that compound over a long period of time and it'll be really magical, things that will happen over 5 or 10 years, it's impossible to imagine, Anything that has happened in my life so far is because of different habits I picked up over a period of time. Some habits, I've copied from the people I admired. Some habits I picked up from the books I've read. Some habits are more born out of a necessity because I wanted to do something. I understood, to be able to write a book, I have to write 500 words a day. So therefore, I had to build that habit. It's very much a work in progress. At this point, I feel absolutely free. I have the confidence that I can build the habits I want. And by virtue of being able to build those habits, I can become a different person if I choose to be. If I don't like something about what I do at present, then I can consciously work on changing those habits. So that freedom and that sense of power is, I think, very profound. I hope I'm able to communicate to you like how important the ability to understand how habits work and how empowering the idea that you can make habit change. If you just take in the effort to understand, it's not rocket science at all. People make habit changes all the time. All too often these changes happen because of life events or because we don't have a choice. But if you take control of this dialogue, if you become captain of the ship, that you are going to decide what habit change you want to make, and over a period of time, you are going to become really, really good at making those habit changes, there is basically nothing you can do. I think people who want to have big impact in life, they figure out what are those critical habits. I was recently watching this Netflix series, Last Dance, about the life story of Michael Jordan. He had this habit of always showing up as the first person in the gym for practice and leaving as the last person from the gym. That's a big part of what made him great. I remember listening to a talk by Michael Bloomberg. He's done amazing things in life. He has built a massive business. He has been a very successful politician. He is a great philanthropist. And he was saying that very early in his career, he decided that no matter what happens, he's going to be first person who comes to office and last person to leave the office. Again, Michael Jordan-like attitude. And he was creating that single habit to everything that he's been able to do in his life. A friend of mine, Mukesh Prasad Singh, he has this annual ritual where he takes last week of the year off. He deeply reflects about his year, what all happened in the year, what are things he's proud of, what are things he did right, what changes he was able to make, what are things he's not able to do. And he's been doing it for last 25 years. He has all those documents written over last 25 years. If you don't do it, you can start that annual ritual now. You'll be able to reflect on that 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, develop deeper insights about how you are making progress year over year. But you decide what are the habits that matter to you. I don't know anyone who is able to create big impact in life who is not rooted in some fundamental habits which are deeply connected to what the person is trying to achieve. We keep repeating that behavior. That small positivity keeps happening day after day, keeps adding up, and enables all kind of incredible compounding in our lives. So we have covered a lot of ground in understanding how habits work, what habits can do for you, what is the science of habit, how do you build new habits, how do you break habits, but what habits to work on? How do you decide what are the right habits for you? But let's go through some of the high impact habits. Now, I'm not saying everyone should have these habits. This is just a sample of habits that I think a lot of people who pursue peak performance, who pursue high impact, have some version of these habits. Nobody has all of these habits, but these are some sample habits for you to mull over, think about. If something you are able to relate to, something you might have thought of in the past, you can consider building the habit. And everything we talked in this episode about building habits, you can apply to some of these habits. So let's go through morning till night. What are the habits you consider? So what happens the first thing in the morning after you get up from the bed, get past your daily routine? What are the first few things you engage with? A lot of people these days will probably engage their phone. They'll go through their email, WhatsApp messages, Instagram feed, and so on. So you are already feeding a lot of external information to your brain. Is that what you want to do when you wake up in the morning or not? Obviously, my recommendation is not, it's you want to probably be alone with your thoughts in the morning as opposed to engaging with all kind of information out there which is going to take over your thought process. Do you want to have some kind of priming habit in the morning? What I mean by priming is a lot of people have that. It could be both mind and physical. How do you put yourself in a really good state of mind? Some people listen to certain kind of music. Some people go through a checklist of things which reminds them what is really important to them that day. I have my priming routine that I spend 5 to 10 minutes. It's just a basic list of 5-6 things that I want to be mindful of. And, one of them is just focus on deep work. I feel I can make much better use of my day if I am able to channel my day towards doing one thing deeply as opposed to doing a lot of scattered things. So whatever is important to you that you want to remind yourself of. It could be something like going for a morning walk where you are out there in the nature, breathing fresh air, be alone with your own thoughts and just thinking about, what you want to do during the day. It could be a workout habit. It could be a meditation habit. It could be a reading habit if you like somebody reading in the morning. It could be just spending that quality half an hour with your family members. We just sit on dining table, no one with their phone on. You're just sitting and having a conversation. Um, it could be writing habit. If you want to start getting in the habit of writing something, it could be work related, it could be fiction, non-fiction, anything, it's your choice. So how do you want to fill, first 3-4 hours of the day after you get up? What are the right habits which will help you make progress towards where you want to go in the long term? Similarly, habits related to your work. Most of us spend anywhere between 8 to 10 hours at our workplace. So what are the right kind of workplace habits? The moment you walk in at work, do you get busy with meetings, or you open your laptop and start browsing news and messages and so on? Like, how do you want to start your day? What's the, do you want to have some kind of breathing exercises when you start your day? Or do you want to make a checklist of what you want to get done during the day? One really good habit is to make a checklist, and with that, pick the most important thing and finish that first half of the day. People call this eating your frog. Is a very famous book with the same title. The quote is originally from Mark Twain. The idea of eating your frog means doing the most important task first thing in the morning. So maybe you want to build that as a habit. What do you do during the day? Do you have your lunch at your desk while you're busy coding or working or engaged in a meeting, or you want to have a lunch having a conversation with someone? Do you want to take break every 90 minutes or 2 hours, which is highly recommended? Most of our brain gets fatigued after 60 to 120 minutes of work. Our ability to pay attention, focus goes down. So do you want to have some habits around that? How do you want to close your day? What does your evening look like? It's most people will have lot of autopilot habits in terms of how do you close your work? Are you with people, or are you going to be alone? Do you want to go out? Do you not want to go out? If you reach home, do you automatically switch on the TV and just watch whatever happens on television, or binge watching something on Netflix? Or you want to set aside some time for dinner, reflection, catching up with people you care about? Do you want to consider having some kind of evening journaling practice? A lot of people find it very powerful to just reflect on the day, write down what went well, what didn't go well, what do you want to do different. Do you want to have some kind of gratitude practice where you just take 5 minutes and thank whatever is great in your life? It could be people, it could be your work, it could be your opportunities, it could be your health, anything you feel really good about. So you have opportunities to design all kind of habit throughout your day. Some of these habits appear very simple, but can be very powerful over a long period. What do you do just before you go to bed? Where do you want to keep your phone? Do you want to keep your phone right next to you on the bedside table? Some people even keep their phone below their pillow. Is that what you want to do? Or you want to leave your phone in some other room so that you are not going to be distracted with your phone during the night? So you scan your day and see what are the opportunities to add habits which are going to enhance the quality of your day, which will enhance your productivity, which will enhance your health, which can enhance your relationship, and ensuring that you're slowly moving towards what really matters in your life. You also need to be very cautious about who is building habit in your life. What I mean by that is all the literature about behavioral psychology that we know is also known to all the technology companies in the world, especially social media, video gaming, instant communication. These companies also employ world's top-notch behavioral psychologists. They understand what it takes to build a habit. They understand the cue, action, reward cycle. Everything that happens to your phone has been very intelligently designed for you to consume more and more content. Because the more content you consume, the more time you pick up your phone during the day, That's your attention that is directed towards your phone, and that is the attention the search companies and social networking companies can monetize. That's why you see those annoying ads all the time, because that's effectively you're trading your attention for you get to watch free content which is paid for by the ads. So pretty much these companies are capturing your attention, mining your attention, and selling it to advertisers. And these apps are really good, through intelligent notification. You have push notifications, you have, all notifications are red, because the red catches our attention. If the notification were blue, you will not pay that much attention. It's no coincidence that traffic light is red, because authorities want you to pay attention to red light. Similarly, notifications are red because the app makers want us to pay attention to our notifications. The things we consume, you will have these snacking companies creating all these ads, which almost make it a virtue out of having a evening 4 p.m. snack, as if, having a sugary snack at that time is the best way to enjoy your life. So a lot of advertisers, lot of app makers, they hack into the same circuitry which goes into building habits. A lot of people over a period of time, build up a habit of having a morning cereal. This cereal used to be very high glycemic index, carb which will get absorbed very quickly, spike up your glucose levels in the bloodstream, and they were touted as a healthy habit. These companies will promote that breakfast is the most important habit that one can have, which is absolutely not true. You can eat whenever you want. We'll have a very detailed podcast on the right way to design your diet. But keeping in mind that lot of habits that we acquire is because of advertisement we are exposed to, certain kind of lifestyle that we see on YouTube or Instagram, how various apps are designed to get our attention, give us that instant dopamine hit so that we crave that action again and again. So it's very important to guard yourself. You can choose to build whatever habits make sense to you, which enhances quality of your life. But be watchful of, are you letting other people build habits for you? So in the habit context, people also often talk about rituals. What is the difference between habit and ritual? Both are these repeated activities which are hopefully autopilot behavior. The way I see it, every ritual is also a habit, but every habit is not a ritual. What makes a difference? What rituals do is they elevate the meaning of habit. The moment you impose something, larger in your life or deep, profound meaning to a habit, which means something really deeply to you. An example of very simple ritual is daily or a weekly prayer habit a lot of people have. Now, it's obviously a habit that you are repeating it on a regular frequency, but for most people, the meaning is much larger than just the act of doing that activity. So that's the big difference between habits and ritual. Whenever you are able to make a habit into a ritual, not only it becomes that much more stronger, but also affects you at deep emotional level. We see that a lot of sports people, when they walk into arena, whether it's a cricketing ground or it's a boxing ring, they will bend down and touch the floor. That's an act of showing their reverence for that field. They are grateful for the fact that they're getting to play that sport. The sports means much larger to them than just getting to arena and competing for best possible score or for the medal. We see a lot of performance artists do the same thing. The moment they walk onto stage, they will again bend forward and touch the stage. Sometimes they will take a moment or two, say a small prayer or reflect. Sometimes they remind themselves that, this is their life's ambition, this is their life's dream, to be able to be on that stage and get to perform day after day. So when you start to become more aware of that meaning, you become that much more focused, you are fully present, you will get the maximum out of spending those few hours in that activity. So you can think about, consciously, where do you have the opportunity to create a ritual out of some habits in your life? Some of the habits that I do which have deeper meaning to me are things like in the morning, I have a small priming habit. I go through few things. One of the first one is, this Latin phrase, memento mori, which basically means remember you have to die. Now that has a deeper meaning to me. It makes me on a daily basis being aware of the finiteness of life. Therefore, I am that much more inspired to try to do something useful during that day. I know this one day out of finite number of days that me or anyone else have. So I have deeper meaning as opposed to just reminding myself, what all I want to accomplish that day. Similarly, I go to my parent house every day, Sunday evening, get to eat home food, but just connecting with them, spending that 1 hour with them every week has a deeper meaning to me. So it's obviously a habit. I do it every Sunday, but because of meaning, the chances of me missing that is very low. I'll really go out of my way to make sure I am not missing that. Some of the authors I like, they've talked about some very interesting rituals. Steven Pressfield, who has written this phenomenal book called War of Art. So he talks about this core idea of, resistance, that whenever any of us want to do a creative work, we feel this resistance to procrastinate, to not do it today, to do it later, and slowly a number of days and weeks will pile on. And sometimes even when we sit down to work, we don't feel inspired. We feel we don't have anything interesting to say. So he has created this ritual, which basically called Invocation of the Muses. He borrowed this from ancient Greeks, where they had literally a song that they will sing from the beginning of any creative performance or creative endeavor. So he just goes through the motion of reciting that poem. So for him, the act of doing that poem elevates the meaning of that exercise. Then he's no longer trying to write his 500,000 words. He's trying to literally get the muses to sing on his shoulder, so he's inspired to create something which does not exist. And the attitude you'll bring into your work, changes automatically. At Cult, we use a very simple ritual. At the end of each class, the whole class gathers, they put their hands together, and in unison, they all shout, "We are Cult." That act of saying "We are Cult" together improves the group cohesiveness. People feel they belong to Cult community. The 50 minutes they spend together working out acquires a larger meaning, and therefore their odds of coming back for next class and considering Cult class a big part of their identity goes up. So you can think about what are the habits you currently have or habits you want to build, and what meaning you can impart at the beginning of the habit, at the end of habit, or when you think about that habit. I think that's one very powerful tool to not only make sure the habit sticks, but it also starts to serve deeper meaning in your life. So I think we can intelligently harness the power of rituals and create much deeper meaning out of some of the habits that matter to us. Rituals can put us in a certain state of mind. They can be great mood shifter, because every time you do the action, you're also aware of what that means to you. And then you can tap into that state of being. It could be sense of awe. It could be deep resolution. It could be deep gratitude. Whatever it means to you, it's for you to decide. But you can be more aware of this whole idea of creating rituals. So that's pretty much I wanted to cover. I think hopefully by now you are convinced that how important and powerful habits are. There is no running away from the fact that we are all bundle of habits. Whether you pay attention to this podcast episode or not, we are all accustomed to the habits that pretty much run our day. If we are able to pay more attention to habits that we have, acknowledge which are the habits we like, which are serving good purpose in our life, which are the habits we have which are perhaps not serving good purpose or leading us down a track which is totally disconnected from the vision we have for ourselves, then you can proactively work on those habits. I think we covered a lot of literature and tools on how one can go about building new habits or breaking existing habits. But if you can come away from this episode with the conviction that I'm going to be more aware about the habits I have, I'm going to be more deliberate about which habits I want to keep, which habits I want to change, you can basically become whoever you want to be. And the impact of this in your life, and as a result, the impact you want to create in your life will become that much more real. I talked about the impact has to be a long-term journey. Long-term happens only one day at a time. Day happens one habit at a time. And being in control of the habits you have is the surest way of changing who you are, of building what you want to build in the long term, and ultimately getting closer and closer to the exponential impact you want to create in your life. So what is the habit you want to start changing from today? Think about it. At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.